with James today from C-Level Operations, APAC, and we're starting a series of videos around project management challenges in MSPs that we both see. So we're going to share back and forth on that with what we see going on with the MSPs we serve and perhaps things you can do to solve that and work around those. So I'm Wim Kerkhoff, the founder and CEO of Top Left. I also have two MSPs here in Canada that we run, one on the Windows side, one on Linux called Crafty Penguins. And today I have with me James. So James, perhaps you can tell us a bit about yourself and what you do with your clients.
Thanks, Wim. Well, g'day everyone. I'm James, Managing Director of C-Level APAC. So I'm based in Australia in Tasmania, so I'm about as far away as you can get from Wim over in Vancouver. So I've come from an MSP background, managing and owning businesses, and I've been coaching MSPs for about 4 years, including being involved in the IT Nation Evolve program, facilitating service leaders. So I've been able to develop a lot of knowledge outside of just operating my own business. I get the unique opportunity to work with a lot of leaders and see a lot of these issues happening over and over and over again. So what I often find is when we start opening up these conversations about talking about the challenges, people have the same challenges over and over and over again. So you're not alone, and that's why we're trying to do this series, is to share some of these insights and just make you more aware of like what's actually happening, because that's the first part of the battle. A lot of what I come across, the leaders and the MSP owners, they see a lot of the symptoms to the problems, but they don't really understand what the real problems and the root causes are, so that they can improve their businesses and make the changes that they want. So I'm excited to dive in with you today, Wim, and let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah. So we would like to just in this video like to overview some of those challenges, and then we'll maybe deep dive into those and into future video segments. So I think what we came up with was the big one is seeing the bigger picture. What challenges your clients have they seen with working with a PSA of, well, what do we mean by not seeing the bigger picture?
It's a constant thing, isn't it? It's the first thing that most people will talk about their projects, especially when you get into the project manager and the tech level, is the PSAs aren't good enough. They have some good functionality, but being able to see that big picture, and like what you said, what do we mean about the big picture? Being able to see multiple projects at one go, where the progress is up to, what are all the components of those projects and where are those components up to, and then how do they actually meld together in a timeline. It's really difficult to see in a PSA. I don't know about you, Wim, but even back when I was managing projects, it's really easy when you're only doing one at a time, but I don't know how many people are only doing one at a time.
Nobody, no. But yeah, there's all these different lenses that you have in your PSA. Like you can look at your profitability, but you can be profitable in a project, but yet your clients are choked at you and going to pull the plug and asking for money back. Or you could be profitable, but your techs are burned out and stressed out. That's mental health is a huge issue in this industry. And individually, your techs, the engineers could be successful because they're working their tickets individually. Your project manager could feel successful because they're communicating with the client, they're talking to the techs. But overall, the flow is horrible. Stuff is taking forever to getting done in the wrong order. And I just seen that there's a lot of clicking around. You got to go into all these different screens, drill into the work plan. Where is this ticket at? And you're drilled in so far that you don't get the bigger picture.
And I typically find, so in other areas of the business, I talk about service delivery, a lot of people complain about the PSA, but it's a lot of the times from not understanding how the PSA works, not understanding what the best practices work, where even the more mature MSPs that we work with, this issue becomes even more difficult to manage because all of a sudden we've got the management processes in place to oversee this. So it becomes actually even more important to be able to look at these lenses, but we don't have that one lens to look through all those different components. So it's not like other parts of the PSA where my first response is, well, you're not using it properly. Even if you are using the PSA properly, it's very difficult. And a lot of them, well, the major players haven't done much development on the project sides for a long time.
No. So how do people work around this? What are some of the band-aids you see them using?
Oh, straight up. Especially if it's a tech managing projects, straight up. It'll be some other random system like Asana or Trello or an Excel spreadsheet or Smartsheets or Microsoft Planner, you name it. They'll find a technical solution to visualize it for themselves And often it is a much better visualization, and they're often much more bought into providing the details inside those components as well. But obviously that opens up some new challenges then, because now all of a sudden we're working outside of ConnectWise. So that, like what you were talking about, Wim, we can track profitability very well inside the PSAs. As soon as you take that outside, all of a sudden we can't track the profitability because we're assuming, and what I've seen from my experience, most people aren't entering time at that point. Or if they aren't breaking it down into the different components. It's just like one phase, one ticket, and they're just dumping all the time in at that level. So it becomes really hard to have any data and metrics to make decisions.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see and hear from you, like, what often causes that problem, and what have you seen that actually solves that problem with a lot of these companies? And you've got a good product here that we're talking about with these solutions, but what techniques have you seen to change that behavior?
Well, it's the method of the project. It's designing your projects so they can flow and they can work from the tickets, that putting the data in the PSA, keeping the data within the PSA. That's what we believe in, is keep the data, because actually ConnectWise is it's a solid database design. So leverage that and then pull the data out in a real-time way to visualize another tool. That's the direction we've gone, and that's working well. But we see that the tool is still only 5 or 10% of the situation. There's the mindset of doing one thing at a time, designing your project ticket so you can actually start it and finish it. That they're not all your projects are open until you finish it, and then you close all your tickets because they're long running. So you got to hit it from multiple sides. The rules, there's training, scheduling time, work habits, mindset. There's a lot in there.
It does sound like a big thing. Like, that's something that I come across a lot. We generally don't have a project management methodology in an MSP. From my experience, I've come from like sort of a construction background. There's a very clear way that you manage projects.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Where IT, we've been built off the back of just make it happen. Often what I see, and I'd be interested to hear what you see out there as well, is the way that we've grown our MSPs are because the owners are very technical. We had all this expertise. We fell into a business. We fell into having some employees. And what we've done is typically is the owners would run and manage projects themselves because they've got all the technical experience. Then they would get too busy and grab the most senior tech that's the best problem solver. But there's no structure to how things are done. And that starting point is where all MSPs start from, and they continue on for a long time until they really see they need to break their maturity and to get to the next level. So we're often starting from the wrong point in the first place. So I completely see where your all the points you were bringing up, it just keeps getting reinforced over and over again, which is the dangerous part.
Yeah. So yeah, the direction we've gone with the project management methodology is embracing Agile and Lean, and in particular Kanban, which is a subset of that. And just the basic rules of visualize your projects, minimize what's in progress at each step along that flow. There's a pipeline from new to done, and having them move along, and reduce the number of work projects or items, whether it's a ticket or a sales activity or project, is reducing number of items in progress because you can better manage it. If you can just talk about 3 projects instead of 30, it's so much easier. So yeah, getting engineers focused on a project for a week and then on to the next one, rather than trying to do 3, 4, 5 at a time and really getting no traction on any of them. So I can show you how an example board of how we do that from projects.
I'd love to see that. I think it'd help to visualize.
Yeah, here's a very simple Kanban for projects from the training database. So 4 columns, new, in progress, monitoring it, and completed. Sometimes it depends on the flow, right? Well, depending on the type of project. Sometimes you're mostly done. You got to let it sit and bake, that migration, whatever it might be, and then completed. So you can add more columns. If you have a waiting or a third party or a client column, you could definitely put those in. So the idea here is minimize your in progress in each column. So we've got 2 in progress. We got some visualization around what's neglected. And this is all training data. These have been sitting there for like a year. So that's why they're showing up in red. And track how we're doing on them. So this is the big picture across all the projects in this fictional MSP.
And this is what I'm seeing a lot of people trying to cobble together in those solutions that we spoke about before, like the Asanas and the Trellos. We're trying to visualize it because it makes the most sense, isn't it? That if we can visualize all the steps that are part of that project and across multiple projects, it's a lot easier to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And you're talking about that focus. I definitely back that up. We've got a tendency to try and do way too much, and this lack of bigger picture also hurts the sales pipeline. Like sales have no idea what the lead time is, because the project team has no idea what the lead time is on the projects they're working on, because they don't have a clear enough big picture. So we keep feeding more and more and more projects in the pipeline in a short time, and we keep spinning our tires because we don't actually know what we're doing and when we're doing it, and we get muddled up. And that probably feeds into the again what you were talking about. The focus is we've generally got a issue in MSPs where, especially in the smaller ones or the ones that are still growing, hitting about the 20 people, we use shared resources as well. So this compounds that issue even further. We've already got a conflict of, well, senior tech, you're supposed to be managing like 15 projects at once, and now all of a sudden they're getting thrown service tickets as well on the day-to-day business as usual thing. So how can't really focus at all, can we? So what I often see with this is, as an MSP, we don't set from a high leadership level, what our priorities actually are. Are projects more important or business as usual more important? Without that, your day-to-day operational people, no matter how good they are, they won't have a basis, and it's always going to be best effort.
Yeah.
Do you see that working that well in that form, or do you see the more structured methods and more structured teams, and even just a structured guideline making those things better? What's been your experience?
Yeah. Two thoughts on that is depending on the type of project work, and sometimes it's just a reality. There's that engineer, that skill set, they've got to help on both. But I think the flow and can be set up. So we're ranking the cards top to bottom so that they don't really have to think. We're taking some of that away from them, that it's ranked. They can grab the next card. And so it's somebody else's job to prioritize the way it should be. Is a bit more project just to sure it's balanced. Just have that visibility, like, hey, his projects are slipping behind. Let's get him a bit more time on that. So it's not a scheduling; it's still keeping it as a prioritization thing. But after doing that for several years, even like this yesterday, we did our quarterly planning for our Windows MSP, and we made a decision to split the Windows team into project and service for like the first time, and because we're seeing that when they're doing both, if they're doing recurring like proactive maintenance tickets and help desk and project, it's just too often those recurring tickets get done ahead of the important projects. So we're leaving money on the table because the projects, it's approved by the client. It's not urgent. There's no deadline, but it's money on the table and it's taking us months to get done. So we're like, all right, we're going to dedicate 2 people to that. And they'll just watch their project board, and then the service team will watch the service boards. And that's very common, of course. That's where we're going, just to help these engineers and it's just be a lot easier for them.
I think that point of money on the table is a really good one. I think we've got, what I often see is with our lack of good, solid project delivery, we're leaving money on the table in 2 ways. Firstly, we're not often billing the client fast enough. So if we're not taking payment up front, which the majority of MSPs don't do, it's all billed in arrear once we complete. We've got a standard Microsoft 365 migration that's like 30 hours worth of work, but it drags over 3 months, which is quite typical in my experience with the issues that we're talking about. There's 3 months of you've provided all this labor, but you've not billed for any of it. So you're absorbing all these costs and excited that you've sold it, but we've got no cash. And then all of a sudden, randomly the project gets closed because we've got no methodology. It gets billed, and then we've got cash in the bank. There's no way as an MSP owner that you can budget. But we're also leaving money on the table because the longer that you drag on projects, outside of like potentially burning a lot of hours on the text to deliver it, you're actually really impacting your service desk. My theory is projects should be number one because we're replacing and upgrading environments all the time. So if you're making the environment better, wouldn't it be better to invest that time now and get it done and done right, you'll have a lot less service tickets coming in because it's a new, well set up environment. You don't achieve that when you're juggling all these things and the poor techs are in chaos. So I think like what you were talking about with your MSP and splitting out to the project and service team, you can do that when you're small as well. Like there's a common misconception of only the big players can split out and have dedicated project resources. And it's just simply not true. It's just based on what your volumes are. So even if you're down to like a 2-person MSP, you can split off someone that's purely dedicated to projects the majority of the time, and that has the empowerment of projects are more important. And then when they're not utilized because we don't have enough projects, then we can bring them back to the service desk. Projects are the easiest thing to resource because we know how many hours or we know how much we're selling. We can then put that to how much manpower we actually need to deliver it. It's not like managed services that can be up and down, up and down. It's often pretty clear for projects, especially when you get good and implement a methodology like what you were talking about, Wim.
Yeah.
I think that changes the game quite a lot.
Yeah, I can show you an example of how if you do have a shared resource, which is just a fact for many MSPs, you just what it is. I'm going to show you this other screen, or we can differentiate per person, which is a project ticket, which is a service one. So it's integrated in their flow. So here, this first swim lane is nobody's assigned to the ticket. So that as people have time available, they should be grabbing tickets from that or should get assigned out. So here's Terry. Green, these are all service tickets. There's actually this Emily have a project ticket here. Oh yeah, so it was in this no resource. So these blue ones aren't assigned, but I could grab it and assign it to Terry here. Oh, this is my training environment and API key is not assigned. But you get the idea. Is we can set up the custom visualizations. So these are just profiles that are in here, highlighting project versus service. You can change the background, the border, all sorts of things. So the team can decide their own flow because every company is different. Every team is different, your client base, the technology. So you can define the rules for your workflow, just like you would if you had sticky notes on a whiteboard and you drew your lines and you wrote on the sticky notes. You would say, hey, blue means this, pink means rush. All those, you have all these rules that your first day, you don't understand what it is, but you get to know it and you follow those rules for how it's visualized. So you can do the same thing in here. So you can prioritize a budget, set your rules of, hey, if it's falling behind, it's a project ticket and no time has been entered for a week, then let's highlight it. It hasn't moved forward. So set your own rules of what does it mean to be neglected?
That's what everyone's screaming out for. Isn't it? That's what everyone's looking for. And this probably, we were talking earlier about having the wrong people. We have often the senior tech is in charge of projects, and this shared resources also slide into them because they're not just doing the tickets. We're expecting them to deliver the projects, do service tickets, like you said, do recurring proactive maintenance, all these other different things. But they've also got to coordinate themselves and others and clients to get the job done.
Yeah.
It's not often going to work like that. So when we talk about the methodologies as well inside projects, it's really like breaking down what do we do and deliver and who's actually responsible for what. Because we don't ever we just say that senior guy is responsible for projects. What does that actually mean? Everyone's got an idea in their head. If I told you that, Wim, what would you think that means?
That's vague. I'm like, yeah, what does it mean? What are you doing when you show up on Monday morning? All right. Like, what's expected? What does good mean? But that's what I see with a lot of these people put job postings on in line. It sounds great. The person starts and they're doing something else and what was in the job posting. They hook somebody, but there's actually no job design, no process behind it, no metrics, which is why I love the Traction EOS system of identifying your core values. What's the role? Do they get the role? Is it clear enough? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity, the skills, which could be mental, emotional kind of things as well. So yeah, that's where we're spending more and more time, which I don't think we're in a horrible spot. We're above average, but we know any effort we put into that role clarity sets that person up to win even more, unlocks their potential.
It's the structure, isn't it? Like the more clarity and structure you give people and the more processes that are there, we're going to have a lot more repeatability and consistency. Yeah. And we all know this, right? Like it's not like it's what we're talking about here is nothing revolutionary. We're not solving all the world's problems right now, but it's actually executing on it. And projects to me are one of the most neglected departments in MSPs. It's often the one that gets the least attention. It's the last to really mature because we've set it up in a way from that sort of history that we spoke about earlier, because it's been this place where we chuck all the highest skilled people, we treat them specially. So we were talking about time entry before, we're using all these tools and they're not really entering time. We feel we end up getting stuck and trapped because we've set this special thing up and then we're afraid to break it because we don't want to lose that senior tech. We're so reliant on them.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be running my business that's solely relying on one person. That's especially when it's not me. It's a really dangerous place to be. But often it's when you start maturing, you'll either find that the person that's doing it actually doesn't want to do half the responsibilities in the first place. Like they don't want to actually contact the clients and coordinate and make sure that other people are doing it right. They just want to deal with the high-end technology. They're just doing it because they love the culture and they want to be at your business and they're trying to help everyone. But as soon as you relieve them of the burden, they're actually way happier and you get way better results.
Yeah.
Or they're not actually that engaged and they've created their own little empire that they're running themselves that's got nothing to do with the rest of the culture of the business. And you'll find most of the time when it's that kind of person, when you start maturing, they'll often self-select out. And then you'll find and create all this other opportunity for all the rest of the technical team that they didn't have before because this person was controlling everything. They were siloing knowledge. They weren't creating documentation for the rest of the guys. So they couldn't fix it because they didn't know how it was set up or how it was supposed to run.
Yeah.
All of those issues come away. Do you see the same thing?
Oh, yeah. I've seen that with managers. Yeah. So that's where we've had to make changes that, because it was the best engineer. Now we lost our best engineer because he's managing half the time and he's getting stressed out. So, yeah, bring in other people, get clear on. So that's where we spend a lot of time with personality profiles, those sorts of things too, because we want to get people in the best spot. We call it HABU, highest and best used, HABU. So that's our goal for everyone. So I got one person on my team who's like performance coach, and he's all about that, dialing in those things. Sometimes we're going to split that, what the person is doing, hire somebody else to take on that part that is really their weakness, and you can give them as much training as you want, but they'll never be good at it. If you get the right person in there who's got the talents and the gifts and the training and the fire in their belly, it's a night and day difference. When they love, let's say in the project manager role, that it's just natural. They see it, they see the bigger picture, they can coordinate all the missing pieces, explain it to the client, they can write well, talk well, know enough of the tech to kind of manage everybody without telling the engineers how it should be done, because there's a lot of pitfalls with PMs trying to tell people how it should be done and how long it should be taken. No, you got to harness the engineer's ability as well. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, the engineer's ability. So where a lot of people come unstuck, I've found, when they're starting to look at, well, actually, maybe we need someone else to manage projects. We all go straight to, we need a really highly technical person. So we go try and find a highly technical project manager. And they don't really exist. Like the ones that are really highly technical and really good project managers, they're in the big end of town because they can go earn a lot of money from those types of skills. So what we will usually recommend when we're talking about this is, if you've got a really good senior tech that's running projects, what's often better is to find someone who's non-technical and pair them up, create a team. You've got a technical leader that's really good, really bought into the company, but they're not good at the client relations, the coordination. There's plenty of people out there that are really good at that. And if you get them working together, you've just built yourself a really good project team. And you can often make up that extra expense of having that non-billable resource through the project efficiencies themselves. Yep. But often when you've got that really high-level tech, you can get them working on really high-level things of like automating issues away inside your business that you're going to invest in through that you are going to come back to pay it off.
Yeah.
And we just don't think of it like that a lot of the time.
Yeah. I think if projects are done right, they should be highly profitable. It shouldn't be we got our hourly rate out of it. That's not a good way of thinking about it. It should be like, this was a better for us than if we had just done it hourly T&M or retainer. And it can be done, but it's having the scope. The scoping is important. Standardization. You can't be doing, if I have 100 projects in a year, they can't all be completely different. You got to be standardizing. So that's where we've been investing into, like, how do we selling more assessments, in particular, like cybersecurity assessments, for example, standardizing it so multiple people can do what's expected. There's going to be 10 tickets, and this is what you do for each one, and this is the budget. So they can grab it, and there's less managing, and that's really helped with flow. So we're doing a lot of these discovery projects for these new Linux opportunities we get, and those are flowing really well. We can take a mid-level engineer, and doesn't have to be the guy with 10 years of experience doing it.
I think that's an awesome point.
That might be a video on its own, or kind of at the top of
I think so. Like, there's a whole topic that we can go through with the scoping and standardization. But I think to not go too deep into it, but I think that is really important. It also goes with the high level text being in projects. To run a profitable project, we shouldn't be having our highest resources working on all the hours inside a project. We should be looking as much as possible to leverage automation, leveraging low level, cheaper resources as much as possible. But the way we run projects in the chaos that we've got doesn't allow for that at all. And I just think that's a really important point to, like, tie it all together. Is you can actually make a lot more money by restructuring your projects properly, and there'll be a lot less stress, and you'll get better client outcomes as well.
Yeah,
just by thinking a bit different.
Yeah, it's the whole leverage. If I look at my time as a CEO, it can't be doing bookkeeping, it can't be running bank, obviously, but it can't be doing billable hour stuff. I can't afford to do $250 an hour consulting stuff. It's got to be new products, new services, new companies, improving my leaders, scaling them up, and some of the thought leadership like this. So, but that's for my team as well, is that they shouldn't be doing $10 an hour, $30 an hour stuff. Like a senior engineer should be doing that premium work. All right. So yeah, we covered kind of five issues here, looking at the bigger picture. Just a lot of people don't have any methodology at all. If they had something, they would already be ahead. They're not using their PSA. They're putting data into Trello or a wiki page or a OneNote or some other thing. So yeah, keep your data in the PSA where it should be. Wrong people or just people not set up to succeed. They're not given the tools, the metrics. There's no example. There's no blueprint, no playbook to follow. And then the shared resources can be a challenge where people are doing multiple types of work that are very different scales. Doing the 1 hour tickets of set up a new user is very different than a long running project over 2 weeks with all the moving parts and pieces. So design for flow and support your team. So perhaps next time we'll get into that scoping. That's a big ball of spaghetti to unwind there. Good. Well, I enjoyed that.
That was awesome.
And yeah, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, James.
Thanks for having me, Wim. Have a good one.
Yep.